The sound of crystal glasses clinking echoed across the marble-floored boardroom, where the towering glass walls framed a blazing sunset over the Santa Monica Mountains. I stood up, tugged at the collar of my slightly wrinkled shirt, and scanned the 10-meter-long walnut table. 14 faces, shareholders, relatives, and lifelong enemies, all bearing the Whitmore name. My name is Ethan Whitmore, 38 years old, once labeled the disgrace of the family, the bastard son, the one who got scrubbed off the inheritance list with a stroke of a pen. They used to call me the loser in thrift store shoes, the guy who teaches real estate basics to broke college kids, and most recently the squatter living in some dump in Inglewood. Let them think that. For a decade I let them talk. What they didn't know, I now owned the very company that fueled their opulent lives. Whitmore Realty Holdings, through a shadow entity I built from the ground up, Halebridge Capital, shielded by 3 shell corporations and a Cayman trust fund. And tonight I was about to lay that truth on the table like a live grenade. Cassandra, my cousin now, head of PR, sat directly across from me. Her legs were crossed, her red silk dress clinging to every curve like it had been sprayed on. The slit teased just enough thigh to send any weak man into a spiral. Her eyes locked with mine. A smile curled on her lips, sultry, provocative, almost daring. "You still remember that night when I was 19, don't you?" Oh, I remembered. And I also remembered the next morning when she cried in front of the whole family claiming I forced her. No one asked my side, they just stared at me with disgust. The illegitimate bastard who dared touch a real Whitmore. I was thrown out that night, soaked in rain wallet, empty, future scorched. My father, not a word. That was 10 years ago. Now Cassandra kept fidgeting in her seat legs, shifting just enough to draw attention. The same perfume, black opium, floated in the air, like a ghost from the past. Every time she leaned forward to flip a page, her blouse gaped slightly, revealing a swell of cleavage that used to be an invitation. But tonight, I wasn't here to fuck. I was here to end it. "Any words, Ethan?" Preston, my cousin, the same prick who once called me dead weight with a business card, smirked as he tapped his Mont Blanc pen on the table. "You still have voting shares, right? Or did you just show up to beg for scraps?" Laughter erupted, polished plastic, nauseating. I inhaled slowly, locking eyes with my father, Richard Whitmore, the titan who built an empire from 3 duplexes in Venice Beach. Now older, grayer, but still carved from ice. No warmth, no surprise, no trace of interest in whether I'd lived or died. I nodded, pushed my leather case toward the center of the table. "Maybe," I said evenly, "it's time you all found out whose building you're sitting in." The clasps snapped open. I laid down a thick stack of documents, embossed seals, legal signatures, transfer of ownership. "What's this?" Cassandra asked, her voice lacking its usual syrupy confidence. I met her eyes. "The acquisition papers for Whitmore Realty. As of this morning, I'm the sole owner." Silence. Preston stammered. Cassandra stood up abruptly, her dress hiking dangerously high up her thighs. "What the hell are you pulling, Ethan?" I stepped closer, close enough to smell the fear on her breath, or was it desire? "I'm not here to punish you, Cassandra," I said, voice low. "I'm here to bury the past." And then I walked away, leaving a trail of frozen stares in my wake. 10 years ago, they called me the shame of the family. Tonight I came back not to prove them wrong, but to dismantle the entire dynasty they built on lies. My name is Ethan Whitmore. I was born into a family where the last name opened doors, cleared checks, and closed deals before you ever entered the room. But for me, Whitmore was never a crown, it was a curse. I was the product of my father's second marriage, or as they preferred to call it, his midlife mistake. My mother, a stage actress with wild red hair and a laugh that filled entire rooms, died in a car crash when I was 16. After that, I was shipped off to the main estate, dropped like a stray dog at the front steps of a house where love was rationed and appearances were everything. I wasn't one of them. Not really. I was the theater kid. The mistake. The one who eats alone. I crushed every academic record at my prep school, got a full scholarship to UCLA, graduated top of my class in investment management. But my father didn't come to the ceremony. Said degrees don't erase where you came from. I didn't argue. I never did. I took a job, the only one I could get, as a low-level analyst at Whitmore Realty Holdings, the company that bore my name but refused to recognize my blood. I started at the bottom, copying documents, fetching espresso, waxing the cars of execs who couldn't remember my name, but sure as hell remembered to insult it. And then came her, Cassandra, my cousin, my sin. I was 24, tired, working late on a Thursday. She showed up at the elevator lobby wearing a silver silk dress that clung to her like melted desire. Her hair was down, lips red, eyes glossy with wine and mischief. "Aren't you tired?" she asked, placing her hand on my chest. "Or do you want to unwind before you go home?" I was young, dumb, desperate to be accepted. We did it right there in the empty office on the 8th floor. Her moans echoing off glass walls, hips moving like sin dressed in designer heels. I thought maybe I'd finally been seen. The next morning my phone buzzed at 6:17 a.m. I was drunk. This never happened. If you tell anyone, I'll say you forced me. By 10 a.m. I was in a boardroom with my father and Preston, watching Cassandra cry into a silk handkerchief, spinning a tale of assault and regret. I wasn't asked for my side. I wasn't offered the dignity of a conversation. Just a decision. "You're out, Ethan. Out of the company, out of the will, and out of the family." I left with nothing but my laptop, $2,000 in my checking account, and a name nobody wanted to say out loud anymore. I moved to Inglewood, rented a shoebox apartment with roaches and creaky pipes, lived off ramen and spite, and started building Hailbridge Capital. No partners, no funding. Just my mind and all the intel I had memorized from years inside Whitmore's ledgers. At first it was just buying foreclosed duplexes and flipping them, then multifamilies, then low-tier commercial lots. I didn't care about prestige. I cared about compound growth. By year 6, Hailbridge quietly owned over 80 properties across 3 states. By year 8, I started targeting firms with dependencies companies that held up Whitmore Realty's skeleton from the shadows. I used aliases, trusts, shellcore, and straw buyers. I didn't need the world to know who I was, only the boardroom. I tracked every dirty deal my family made, every inflated invoice, every fake contractor. I knew that Preston was funneling money from maintenance budgets to buy his chalet in Aspen. I had copies of the receipts Cassandra signed for PR events that were really week-long benders in Dubai. And I knew the man I used to call Dad was barely sober enough to sign his own name anymore. Then last week I got an invitation. End-of-year shareholder reception. Please arrive dressed appropriately. This is not Inglewood. They still thought I was beneath them. And that was perfect. I arrived in a Corneliani suit, understated neutral gray, worn leather shoes, hair slightly unkempt, just enough for them to see what they expected. Ethan, still a nobody, still desperate, still dressing from clearance racks. I smiled. They had no idea the man walking in had spent the last 10 years buying their entire lives out from under them, and now it was time to squeeze. The Whitmore estate in Bel Air hadn't changed in a decade. Same gilded fixtures, same soulless luxury, same polished mahogany floors that creaked under the weight of inherited arrogance. It was 6:47 p.m. when I stepped onto the marble steps, greeted by the faint clinking of champagne flutes and the buzz of carefully curated conversation inside. Behind me, heels clicked on stone. "Didn't think you'd actually show," Cassandra murmured, voice syrupy and soaked in wine. She stepped into the soft glow of the entrance, and for a second the air grew heavy. She wore a black satin dress that hugged her like a second skin slit all the way up to her hip. No underwear, no subtlety. Her body was still a weapon, and she was aiming it straight at me. Although she smirked, eyes trailing down my suit, "I am curious, is that thing rented or just one of the old ones I saw you wear back in 2012? I didn't flinch. I looked her over slowly, hair curled to perfection, lips crimson, breasts pushed high like they were begging for attention, and that gaze full of the same poison and promise from years ago. "Definitely old," I replied. "Just like your tactics. Flirt, tease, play the victim." Her smile twitched. She stepped closer, breath warm against my neck. "What if I said I'm not pretending this time?" she whispered. I leaned in close enough to feel her breath hitch. "Then I'd say, you still think I'm the same dumb kid who fell for it the first time?" I stepped past her. Let her simmer. Inside, the party was in full swing. The kind of crowd where net worth determined how many seconds people made eye contact. Men in $1,000 suits, women in custom Versace, everyone holding a drink a secret or someone else's spouse. I grabbed a bourbon from the bar. Preston, of course, was already mid-brag. "That's the thing about Aspen," he said loudly to some nervous-looking hedge fund baby. "You don't just buy a place. You buy the air rights, too." He saw me, sneered. "Ethan. Wow. Still alive. Still wearing that discount cologne. Still pretending you're relevant," I replied, sipping my drink. The guy tensed, then laughed too loud. "Hey, I'm just saying, man, people like us gotta stay on top. People like you. You kinda get used to looking up, right?" I stared at him. Thought about the shopping center I just purchased, the one next door to his beloved Aspen getaway. I hadn't told him it was mine yet. I would, but not tonight. I didn't come here to throw fists. I came to bury them all with paperwork. An hour later, we moved to the secondary drawing room. Whitmore speak for rich people business in private. The family's senior board sat in, a few outside shareholders, plus 2 lawyers with faces like dried paper. Tonight was more than a party. It was an internal summit. Translation, they were terrified. Preston took the lead. "We've got a problem. A private equity group, Goldgate Limited, has bought up over 50% of our outstanding shares. Quietly. Over 8 months." Murmurs. "They're anonymous." Cassandra chimed in, arms folded tightly over her chest. "Probably foreign. Possibly hostile." My father, Richard Whitmore, the king of cold indifference, cleared his throat. "We need unity. If anyone here has insight into who this Goldgate group is, speak now. We're open to negotiation." I leaned back in my chair, fingers tapping the wood armrest. Across the table, Cassandra was watching me now, her eyes a little too sharp, a little too still. She was starting to suspect. I remembered the last message she sent me. Years after the scandal, years after the lie. "If I came to you, would you still want me? I miss how it felt. No one else has ever made me come like that." I never responded, but I kept the messages. I kept everything. Because revenge, when done right, is not rage. It's restraint. These people thought I vanished because I was weak. They never imagined I was just waiting. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Because tomorrow the audit reports go public. The board gets replaced. The trust gets dissolved. And the Whitmores, they'll realize their empire was sold out from under them by the boy they used to laugh at across the dinner table. The black sheep they forgot had teeth. The meeting ended with tension so thick it lingered like smoke in the air. No one said the name Goldgate Limited again, but it was all anyone could think about. The unknown stakeholder, the one who now controlled the family legacy, the one they couldn't trace, and still, no one looked at me. Not really, which was perfect. I stepped outside into the cool California air, the marble stairs of the Whitmore estate behind me. As I walked toward my car, I heard the sharp click of heels following fast. I didn't turn. I already knew who it was. "Ethan," Cassandra called, breathy. I stopped. She circled in front of me, eyes wide and chest rising, like she'd just run a mile, though I suspected it was just the panic setting in, or excitement. With her, it was always a dangerous cocktail of both. "Was it you?" she asked, voice a whisper. "Tell me the truth. Was it you behind Goldgate?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, closely, hair curled to perfection, eyes lined with precision, dress clinging to her like melted oil. Every inch of her body screaming seduction and desperation. "Do you hate me that much?" she said. "I mean, I know what I did back then, but we had something, Ethan. You can't deny that." I didn't hate her. Not anymore. I reached out, took her chin gently between my fingers, lifting her face to mine. Her lips parted, eyes searching mine for something, forgiveness. "Permission? One more chance. I don't hate you," I said softly. "I'm just not that guy anymore." Then I let go. Left her standing in the driveway, her lips trembling, her confidence, cracking, her perfect image fracturing like glass under pressure. 2 days later, every inbox at Whitmore Realty got the same message, subject for immediate review. Internal financial audit reports, and attached the full breakdown. Every misused dollar, Every rigged contract, every illegal transfer. The fuse was lit. Chaos followed. People called lawyers. Assistants shredded papers. Preston canceled 2 golf trips and 3 dinner reservations. Cassandra tried to stall her husband's phone records from being subpoenaed. I watched it all from my corner office on the 42nd floor of the Halebridge Tower downtown, with a view of the exact same skyline my family used to say I'd never touch. Then came another message, this one encrypted from a private number I hadn't seen in years. I need to see you. Now, please, don't tell anyone. I didn't need to guess. I showed up at the Langston Hotel room 1802. The door was already cracked open, and there she was, Cassandra, wearing nothing but an oversized white button-down unbuttoned halfway down her chest, sleeves rolled, legs bare. The shirt clearly wasn't hers, or maybe it had been. Once. The air in the room was heavy. Dim yellow light spilled over her figure, catching every curve like a spotlight on a weapon. I know I messed up, she whispered, stepping toward me. I lied. I ruined you. I know that. But if this is the end, Ethan, I want to feel it. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I pulled her close, crushed my mouth against hers hard, deliberate. She melted into me like warm wax fingers, gripping my shirt breath ragged against my neck. I lifted her onto the bed, her legs wrapping tight around my waist. Her moans came fast, urgent, not the playful kind from years ago, but the kind that came from surrender. By the time we collapsed onto the sheets drenched in sweat and sins, she was crying. Not from pain, but because she finally understood she didn't hold the power anymore. I left before dawn. Back at my office, I didn't hesitate. I made the call. Release everything, audit, ownership docs, staff restructuring, make it official. Full compliance required in 72 hours or I go to the IRS. No more stalling, no more games. I was done waiting. Later that day, I received a call from Madeline Preston's wife. Ethan, she said, her voice smooth and sharp like the edge of a champagne flute. I know what you've been doing, and I want in. I raised an eyebrow, leaning back in my chair. You've got nothing left to offer, Madeline. She laughed softly. That's where you're wrong. Preston's going to fall. Cassandra's imploding. But me, I've got information. I've got receipts. And you know I've still got that dress you like. I remembered that dress. Tight, black, slit to her hip. The one she wore at the charity gala last year when she pulled me into the women's restroom, pushed my hand between her thighs and whispered, "Just a taste, Mr. Whitmore." I walked out on her that night, not because I wasn't tempted, but because I wasn't ready. Now, Suite 3104, downtown, I said. Come alone, no dress code. She laughed, and I knew this time I wasn't walking away, because sometimes revenge tastes better when it's served after sex. Preston called me exactly 1 hour after the audit report went public. His voice trembled like a man dangling over the edge of a skyscraper, begging gravity to give him just one more breath. Ethan, buddy, listen, we don't have to do this, okay? I know things got messy, but this is nuclear. I let him talk. Look, if you need money, we can work something out. I'll cut you in on the Jackson Hole deal. Hell, we're family. That word family landed like a slap. I'm not doing this because I need anything, Preston, I said coldly. I'm doing it because I earned everything you thought I'd never have. Then I hung up, not out of anger, but because I had no more time for cowards. 1 hour later, another message came through. We need to talk. Come to my office. Tonight. 7 p.m. Alone, Richard Whitmore. My father. I stared at the message for a long time. Thought about the last time I stood in his office, 24 years old, accused without trial, kicked out without mercy. He didn't ask what happened. He just nodded when the board said I was the problem. I almost didn't go, but I needed to see him. Not for closure, for confirmation. I arrived on the dot. The Whitmore Tower still bore his name, though not for much longer. The office was quiet. He sat alone behind his massive oak desk, the same one I'd once scrubbed clean when I was an intern nobody noticed. He looked older now, smaller, but his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. How long, he asked. 10 years, I said. He nodded, staring into the shadows. You were always the quiet one. I thought you'd break under pressure. You gave me all the pressure I needed, I replied. I just chose not to break. He leaned back, sighed. So this was all about revenge? I shook my head slowly. No, revenge is for the weak. I rebuilt what you all tried to bury. I reclaimed what was mine. He looked down his hand, tightening around a crystal glass of untouched scotch. You've done something I never could, he said. You made this empire honest. Silence settled between us. Then the question I had waited for since I was a boy. What do you want, Ethan? I stepped forward, calm, collected. I want you to resign, publicly. I want the board gone. All of them. You'll announce the restructure. You'll name me as CEO. He looked up defeated, but still proud. And if I say no, I placed a thick manila folder on the table. It contained wire transfers, shell companies, tax fraud, everything. You won't. That night, another message lit up my phone. 3104, now. I'm waiting. Madeline. I took the elevator up to the suite. She opened the door wearing nothing but a beige trench coat. When she untied it, it fell open like an invitation. Nothing underneath. Her body was a weapon of high-grade seduction, sculpted curves, olive skin legs for days. And that look, a perfect blend of vengeance and hunger. I don't want an apology, she whispered, stepping into me. I want payback. Then she kissed me, slow burning like gasoline meeting flame. We didn't even make it to the bed. Clothes scattered across the floor, fingernails down my back, her thighs wrapped around me like chains. We devoured each other like two people who'd been caged for years, and tonight every barrier came down. She moaned my name like a mantra, like a curse, like a confession. When it was over, we laid there, sweat slick, breathless, bruised in the best ways. She looked at me, eyes half-lidded, lips swollen. I want in, she said. The new board. The new empire. I want a seat. And I want you. I studied her for a long second. You're dangerous, I said. Her smile was all teeth. So are you. The next morning, I walked into the Whitmore boardroom. Everyone was seated, quiet, tense. Cassandra stared at the floor. Preston wouldn't meet my eyes. My father sat at the head of the table for the last time. I'm stepping down, he said. Murmurs, shock. As of this moment, Ethan Whitmore is your new CEO. Effective immediately, no applause, just silence. Then I stood, pulled out the restructuring plan, read every item, fired every liar, promoted every worker who actually gave a damn. Then I turned to Preston. You have 48 hours to vacate your Aspen property. We own it now. Oh, and your wife, she's staying with us. To Cassandra. Your husband's company has been blacklisted. I suggest you start looking for a new hobby. And finally, to the room. This is not revenge. This is a reset. You built a house on sand. I'm here to pour the concrete. I gathered my papers, adjusted my tie, and walked out. The boardroom of my childhood, the place where I was once humiliated, now behind me. This wasn't a comeback. This was a takeover. 3 months after that final boardroom reckoning, the towering Whitmore letters were taken down from the top of the building. In their place, Halebridge. Sleek black steel cut, minimalist, bold, permanent. No more illusions. No more borrowed legacy. It didn't make the news. It became the news. Illegitimate son buys out billion-dollar dynasty. Fallen heir dismantles his family's empire from the inside. From disgraced intern to real estate king, the Ethan Whitmore story. But I didn't do interviews. I didn't go on CNBC. I didn't need applause from strangers who didn't see me bleed. I let my results speak for themselves. Preston was indicted 2 weeks later on charges of wire fraud and embezzlement. The Aspen house sold, the trust fund gone, the yacht named Inheritance seized and auctioned off for a fraction of its value. He tried to call me. I didn't answer. Madeline filed for divorce the next morning and walked away with a sizable alimony package and a newly inked role as VP of Communications at Halebridge Capital. She didn't just survive. She pivoted and played the long game like a pro. Cassandra disappeared for a while, but a few months later I heard she'd resurfaced, teaching at a women's shelter in South Central LA. Self-defense public speaking career, training for underprivileged girls. I never reached out, but I did anonymously fund the organization under a pseudonym. She must have known it was me. She never said a word. My father still lived in the old Bel Air estate. He stayed quiet, didn't fight, didn't flee. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he understood finally that what I took wasn't revenge, it was responsibility. I visited him once a month. He always opened the door. He never said sorry. But one afternoon as I turned to leave, he put a hand on my shoulder. Just once. Firm. Silent. It was enough. On a December evening, I stood alone atop the penthouse of Halebridge West, my signature mixed-use development in downtown LA. Where once there was an abandoned commercial park, now stood apartments filled with young families, immigrants, workers, and dreamers. The city lights buzzed beneath me. I had become the man they once warned me I'd never be without ever becoming the monster they expected. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Madeline. She wore a cream-colored coat and a soft smile. She walked up beside me, her hair caught in the wind, her perfume subtle but familiar. "You know," she said, "I used to think you were the quiet one, the one who'd fade away." I smirked, and now she turned, eyes glinting. "Now I know quiet men don't fade. They build." I pulled her into my arms, slow and sure. We didn't need to speak, because everything that needed to be said had already been burned into history. A week later, I stood on stage at the Los Angeles Humanitarian Real Estate Awards accepting a plaque I never asked for. I looked out at the crowd. CEOs, politicians, media darlings. They were all waiting for some polished speech. I gave them something else. When I was 24, I said I was dragged out of a boardroom and erased from my own family tree. No one defended me. No one believed me. I lost everything except my drive. I didn't fight back by screaming louder. I didn't launch lawsuits. I didn't throw punches. I just got to work. I built something real, brick by brick, deal by deal. While the people who laughed at me got drunk on legacy, I was out here earning mine. I'm not here to prove them wrong anymore. I'm here to show you what happens when the underdog stops barking and starts building empires. Standing ovation. I stepped down from that stage with nothing left to prove, only more to create. 6 months later, during a warm spring evening, I hosted a courtyard party at the original Inglewood complex, my first property, now fully renovated, still affordable housing, still protected from gentrification. My father showed up in jeans, no entourage, no suit. My mother would have smiled. Preston didn't show. Cassandra did from a distance. I saw her laughing with a little girl over sugar cookies. For the first time, she looked free. Madeline stood by my side sipping wine, her heels kicked off. And me, I looked around and finally understood what it meant to win without destruction. I didn't just beat the Whitmores. I rewrote what it means to be one. Final note to those watching: if you've ever been underestimated, discarded, laughed at, don't waste your breath proving them wrong. Build something so unshakable they can't pretend you never existed. Don't shout, build. Don't plot revenge. Become the lesson. Because the greatest revenge is becoming exactly who they said you couldn't be.